My name is Jason Powers. I'm bringing Take 10 to you as a way to give to the community a resource to help us navigate through this COVID 19 pandemic. I'd like to think of this as maybe 2 or 3 times a week exercise to help build your resilience and your well being. Now, it's not exercise in terms of physical exercise, but it is exercise nonetheless. Now we know if you want to run a marathon, or say if you're an athlete, preparing for a game or even a season, you need to get your physical well-being up to the best condition it can possibly be. Now, sports is also mental, but you get the analogy. Now, in times of crises, you might say to yourself, well, why do I need to work on my mental well-being? This is not the time to meditate. And I'd say it's precisely the time to look inwards. The exercise portion of what we're doing is helping you build that resource that will help you respond instead of react. Now, the reason to look inward is so that you're able to have a relationship with yourself in terms of what your mind does. You're able to respond instead of react. You're able to make choices instead of having your emotions dictate your actions and behaviors. But it does take a lot of training. Now, if you want to learn concert level piano, you've got to practice and you sound terrible at first, but over time, you start to get control of the muscles of your forearm, your hands independently, and so forth. Now, the mind in its basic state is entropy. It is a mess. The mind is a mess. There's all kinds of thoughts and ideas and judgments and inner shame, and then there's awareness. Like, we're aware that this is happening. We're aware that we're aware that we're aware that we're aware ad infinitum, and it can be actually quite grueling to be in one's mind alone. In fact, it's the worst thing to do to somebody is put them in isolation, right? If you're in jail, you're already punished and you're not acting right there. The way to punish you is to take you out of the population and put you in solitary confinement, because being alone with one's mind is worse than being amongst even hardened criminals, say. So I don't mean to paint such a negative picture, except to say that if you do nothing to strengthen the mind, then you're really preparing to fail, because right now everybody, all our schedules, our routines, they're disrupted, right? Gyms are closed. So let's say that was part of your usual stress relief and self-care, which is healthy, and you can't do that, and you're sort of in a quagmire. And right now, when things are changing, it seems like every day. Um, it's easy to say watch TV, to fall victim, or to escape through binge watching or through exercise even. But that's not going to help me respond in the moment when my mind is doing what it does, right? It wanders, it craves, it judges, it can drive you mad. So, without further ado, let's move into what will be a breath awareness meditation. Now, I want you to get comfortable. That means any position is okay as long as your arms and legs are not crossed. It's ideal if your feet can be on the ground. If you're laying down or you need to assume another position, that's perfectly fine. I strongly advise that if you're driving, to just stop and listen to this when you're not driving. Certainly turn this off if you're doing anything that can put you or others in harm's way, like driving or operating other heavy machinery, because I'm going to ask you in a minute to close your eyes and start to focus on your breath. So I'll start and end with the same gong that I began with. Now, again, we're going to be offering these 2 to 3 times a week, And hopefully it will be a resource for you to help give you some sort of new reprieve, a tool. And over time, with practice, you may not be ready for Carnegie Hall of resilience, but you're certainly going to be further along than you were before you started. So, in a comfortable position, I want you to breathe in and out, either nose or mouth. Right now, it's totally okay, but I want you to pay attention as you take a deep breath in and let it out where you feel it the most. Now, we're going to do 5 deep breaths in and out, and just focus on where you feel it the most in your body. After a couple more deep breaths, and I'm going to keep talking you through this, what I want you to do is let your body go. Let the breathing happen on its own. Try not to control it, but pay attention to it. Observe how the breath happens automatically. How powerful is that? You're still noticing the same place in your body where the breath is most pronounced in you. Some people notice the rushing in their nostrils or the back of their throat. Other people will notice it more as the belly falls and rises. But all the while, letting the body breathe, observing it like clouds in the sky or from a third person perspective. A lot of times when we observe something, we will try to control it. And that's okay. If the mind starts making the breath more shallow, more rapid, it's okay. Just observe that that's what happens and go back to observing. What generally helps for me and for many teachers that I've had along the way is if you find yourself in a tense position, in a place where maybe you've disrupted the breath too much, take 5 deep breaths to center yourself and observe. Observe the breath go in, observe the breath go out. Observe the breath in and observe out. And try to focus only on the movement of your breath, that one life-sustaining anchor that we can return to at any time. In times of joy, of shock, of crisis, the breath is always there. It can always be an anchor for you. That's why we're starting with it on the very first Take 10. It's going to be something that's asked of you a lot because it is so constant, so universal, it's so anchoring. Again, the mind is going to wander. It might have already done so, and that's okay. We're just approaching this as an observer. If it judges, that's okay too. Observe the mind as it's doing its job. It's really not there to kill us. Its nature is not something that has to rule us if we can observe it. It is a great first step. Doing this exercise, learning to observe the breath, is a first step to learning to observe the mind. And when we do that, we put ourselves in a less reactive, a less puppeted position, and more of somebody who can respond during these crisis times, who can make choices instead of having the mind and emotions make the choices for us. So as we end, I'm going to ask that as you start to begin again, as you go through the rest of your day, of your week, try to focus on your breath as an observer and see if it makes any difference. And with that, I bid you namaste.